7,000 Romaine, Los Angeles, 38, by Joan Didion. 7,000 Romaine Street is in that part of Los Angeles familiar to admirers of Raymond Chandler and Dashiell Hammett, the underside of Hollywood, south of Sunset Boulevard, a middle-class slum of model studios and warehouses and two-family bungalows. Because Paramount and Columbia and Desilu and Samuel Goldwyn studios are nearby, many of the people who live around here have some tenuous connection with the motion picture industry. They once processed fan photographs, say, or knew Jean Harlow's manicurist. 7,000 Romaine looks like a faded movie exterior, a pastel building with chipped Art Moderne detailing. The windows now either boarded or paned with chicken wire glass, and, at the entrance, among the dusty oleander, a rubber mat that reads, "Welcome." Actually, no one is welcome, for 7,000 Romaine belongs to Howard Hughes, and the door is locked. That the Hughes Communication Center should lie here in the dull sunlight of Hammett-Chandler country is one of those circumstances that satisfy one's suspicion that life is indeed a scenario. For the Hughes Empire has been, in our time, the only industrial complex in the world, involving, over the years, machinery manufacture, foreign oil subsidiaries, a brewery, two airlines, immense real estate holdings, a major motion picture studio, and an electronics and missile operation, run by a man whose modus operandi most closely resembles that of a character in The Big Sleep. As it happens, I live not far from 7,000 Romaine, and I make a point of driving past it every now and then, I suppose in the same spirit that Arthurian scholars visit the Cornish coast. I am interested in the folklore of Howard Hughes, in the way people react to him, in the terms they use when they talk about him. Let me give you an example. A few weeks ago, I lunched with an old friend at the Beverly Hills Hotel. One of the other guests had been a well-married woman in her 30s who had once been a Hughes contract starlet, and another was a costume designer who had worked on a lot of Hughes pictures and who still receives a weekly salary from 7,000 Romaine, on the understanding that he worked for no one else. He has done nothing but cash that weekly check for some years now. They sat there in the sun, the one-time starlet and the sometime costume designer for a man whose public appearances are now somewhat less frequent than those of The Shadow, and they talked about him. They wondered how he was and why he was devoting 1967 to buying up Las Vegas. You can't just tell me, it's like they say, that he bought the Desert Inn just because the high rollers were coming in and they wouldn't let him keep the penthouse, the ex-starlet mused, fingering a diamond as big as the Ritz. It must be some part of a larger mission. The phrase was exactly right. Anyone who skims the financial press knows that Hughes never has business transactions or negotiations. He has missions. His central mission, as Fortune once put it in a series of love letters, has always been to preserve his power as the proprietor of the largest pool of industrial wealth still under the absolute control of a single individual. Nor does Hughes have business associates. He only has adversaries. When the adversaries appear to be threatening his absolute control, Hughes might or might not take action. It is such phrases as appear to be and might or might not, peculiar to business reportage involving Hughes, that suggested the special mood of a Hughes mission. And here is what the action might or might not be. Hughes might warn, at the critical moment, "You're holding a gun to my head." If there is one thing Hughes dislikes, it is a gun to his head. Generally, this means a request for an appearance or a discussion of policy. And at least one president of TWA, a company which, as Hughes ran it, bore an operational similarity only to the government of Honduras, departed on this note. The stories are endless, infinitely familiar, traded by the faithful like baseball cards, fondled until they fray around the edges and blur into the apocryphal. There is the one about the barber, Eddie Alexander, who was paid handsomely to remain on day and night standby in case Hughes wanted a haircut. "Just checking, Eddie," Hughes once said when he called Alexander at 2 in the morning. "Just wanted to see if you were standing by." There was the time Convair wanted to sell Hughes 340 transports, and Hughes insisted that, to ensure secrecy, the mission be discussed only between midnight and dawn, by flashlight, in the Palm Springs municipal dump. There was the evening when both Hughes and Greg Boutzer, then his lawyer, went incommunicado, while, in the conference room of the Chemical Bank in New York, the money men waited to lend TWA $165 million. There they were, $165 million in hand, the men from 2 of the country's biggest insurance companies and 9 of its most powerful banks, all waiting, and it was 7 p.m. of the last day the deal could be made, and the bankers found themselves talking by phone not to Hughes, not even to Boutzer, but to Boutzer's wife, the movie star Dana Winter. "I hope he takes it in pennies," a Wall Street broker said when Hughes 6 years later sold TWA for $546 million and drops it on his toes. Then there are the more recent stories. Howard Hughes is en route to Boston aboard the Super Chief with the Bel Air Patrol riding shotgun. Howard Hughes is in Peter Bent Brigham Hospital. Howard Hughes commandeers the 5th floor of the Boston Ritz. Howard Hughes is, or is not, buying 37.5% of Columbia Pictures through the Swiss Banque de Paris. Howard Hughes is ill. Howard Hughes is dead. No, Howard Hughes is in Las Vegas. Howard Hughes pays $13 million for the Desert Inn, $15 million for the Sands, gives the state of Nevada $6 million for a medical school, negotiates for ranches, Alamo Airways, the North Las Vegas Air Terminal, more ranches, the rest of the Strip. By July of 1967, Howard Hughes is the largest single landholder in Clark County, Nevada. "Howard likes Las Vegas," an acquaintance of Hughes once explained, "because he likes to be able to find a restaurant open in case he wants a sandwich." Why do we like these stories so? Why do we tell them over and over? Why have we made a folk hero of a man who is the antithesis of all our official heroes, a haunted millionaire out of the West, trailing a legend of desperation and power and white sneakers? But then we have always done that. Our favorite people and our favorite stories become so not by any inherent virtue, but because they illustrate something deep in the grain, something unadmitted. Shoeless Joe Jackson, Warren G. Harding, The Titanic, How the Mighty Are Fallen, Charles Lindbergh, Scott and Zelda Fitzgerald, Marilyn Monroe, The Beautiful and the Damned, and Howard Hughes. That we have made a hero of Howard Hughes tells us something interesting about ourselves, something only dimly remembered. Tells us that the secret point of money and power in America is neither the things that money can buy, nor power for power's sake. Americans are uneasy with their possessions, guilty about power, all of which is difficult for Europeans to perceive because they themselves are so truly materialistic, so versed in the uses of power. But absolute personal freedom, mobility, and privacy. It is the instinct which drove America to the Pacific, all through the 19th century, and the desire to find a restaurant open in case you want a sandwich, to be a free agent, to live by one's own rules. Of course, we do not admit that. The instinct is socially suicidal, and because we recognize that this is so, we have developed workable ways of saying one thing and believing quite another. A long time ago, Lionel Trilling pointed out what he called the fatal separation between the ideas of our educated liberal class and the deep places of the imagination. "I mean only," he wrote, "that our educated class has a ready, if mild, suspiciousness of the profit motive, a belief in progress, science, social legislation, planning, and international cooperation. Those beliefs do great credit to those who hold them. Yet it is a common, if not on our beliefs, then on our way of holding them, that not a single first-rate writer has emerged to deal with these ideas and the emotions that are consonant with them in a great literary way. Officially, we admire men who exemplify those ideas. We admire the Adlai Stevenson character, the rational man, the enlightened man, the man not dependent upon the potentially psychopathic mode of action. Among rich men, we officially admire Paul Mellon, a socially responsible inheritor in the European mold. There has always been that divergence between our official and our unofficial heroes. It is impossible to think of Howard Hughes without seeing the apparently bottomless gulf between what we say we want and what we do want, between what we officially admire and secretly desire, between, in the largest sense, the people we marry and the people we love. In a nation which increasingly appears to prize social virtues, Howard Hughes remains not merely antisocial, but grandly, brilliantly, surpassingly asocial. He is the last private man, the dream we no longer admit. Thank you for listening.